We will move on to our next question, and Kelty will be given the first opportunity. Any expansion of the Truro Tennis, or rather an expansion of the Truro Tennis Club is recently approved despite an outcry from some nearby residents. Was this situation handled properly?
Actually, it was an interesting situation because I was attending the meeting where it came up on the agenda. At that meeting, I had been trying to get a hold of a copy of the agenda beforehand. It wasn't available on the web. I was sitting in the meeting trying to look it up on my phone. It still wasn't available on the web. So people didn't know it was going to be discussed at that meeting. So the community area around wasn't informed through the agenda process. And later, it was referred to an in-camera discussion. There wasn't a specific statement as to why it went into in-camera. I don't know what the rationale for that was, but it wasn't something that was obvious to me as an observer. And so the discussion around what was going to happen and how it was going to happen was out of the public view. Then it came back to the agenda on the council, and by then the neighbors were upset because they felt like they were learning about it for the first time. They really didn't know and understand. And they also had different information. In fact, the plan had kind of changed from what they were hearing to what was actually proposed that day, and it wasn't even distributed into the audience. So the people who were there to object didn't really know what they were objecting to yet. So then it was passed in an environment where you had conflict. In my mind, that's conflict that could have been avoided. It could have been avoided by creating an environment where there was open information, people had the chance to participate, people were fully informed. I don't think the people who are working with the tennis courts and the neighbors are really that far apart. And I think it's something that could be resolved and could be, they could come to an agreement that would not be as upsetting as the situation that we had.
Thank you. Bill?
I was at that same meeting, and we did not go into camera to discuss anything about the tennis court. It was a public meeting from beginning to end.
No, it was referred to in camera.
Well, we'll check the video on that one. Anyway, but as far as it being handled properly, we had talked to the tennis club for well over 6 or 7 months. We advised them to go to speak to the neighbors, and this was the third time around as far as what they had hoped to do, and in consultation with the neighbors. Plan 1 was thrown out. Plan 2 was not agreed to, and then finally we got to Plan 3. And certainly it went to the Truro Parks and Recreation first, and Truro Parks and Recreation passed it, and we acted upon the recommendations. I asked the solicitor that day if this plan went against the original plan for Victoria Park, and the answer was no. You talk about green space there. Some people said that we were putting up prison type environment, and I'm thinking to myself, this is a very small part of that green space, and I live in the area and I see who uses it, and it's not utilized fully to its potential by a lot of people. Now they do go and they play frisbee and they perhaps fly a kite, but very, very rarely, and there's still lots of room left. Okay, whether you're going to have that in your meetings where some people say they were never consulted, they never have enough time, and it's always that way, never, 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 never. But certainly there could have been things that done 100 times better and 1,000,000 times worse. I'm comfortable with the decision that was made.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to our next question. Bill, are bike lanes needed for Truro? And if so, can the town afford them?
Well, our problem is, in June, I had the privilege of being in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, where their streets are magnificent streets, which accommodate bike lanes quite nicely. Our problem in Truro is that our streets are so narrow, and that has come to council frequently. It's going to have some expense, and so there's probably some areas that are better than others, but when you watch the whole thing unfold, I never say never, but there has to be courtesy on both sides for people who use the roads, and what were the roads built for. So it is a challenge. It will be expensive in light of the traffic patterns that we have. I asked the former mayor years ago why the roads in Truro were built the way they were. And legend has it that the surveyors were working on one side of the town, the north, the others were working on the south. They got into a fight one night, and they didn't speak to each other, which makes sense to me, because that's the only way I can explain why the streets are designed the way they are. So, again, it all comes down to the community. I don't have a lot of people coming to me and saying, we need bike lanes. And if they do need them, are you prepared to pay for them? Just like anything else, transit, bikes, you name it, are you prepared to pay?
Kelty, do you think that bike lanes are needed for Truro? And if so, do you think the town can afford them?
I think we definitely could not afford to put them on every street that we have in Truro, because there are many streets that really they just would not be compatible with. But I think that there are ways to create certain routes, certain paths of travel, certain ways of getting through town safely on a bike. And sometimes that's just a matter of identifying some specific streets that are more bike friendly than others, that have more space for a car and a bike and perhaps less traffic, and kind of really designing the town. And as you're working on your designs and as you're working on your refurbishment of roads, thinking about, is this a street that we could turn into something that has a bike line as we're doing our typical replacement of pavement and our replacement of the curbs and that sort of thing. I think that there's ways to make it a much more bike-friendly town. I think expecting that we could put bike lanes on every street is probably not realistic, not within the budgets that we have and the priorities that we have for other things. But I do think that there's a lot more that we could be doing to create a space where it is safer to bike. I'm not sure that would convince me to bike, because we live at the top of Burnett Street, and it would terrify me to go down the street, and going up the street would certainly be a workout. But there are lots of other places in town where they really could benefit from having better bike lanes.
Okay, thank you. And Kelty, we'll start with you for our next question, which is, we've had some big public projects taking place in this region over the last few years. For example, the new hospital, civic center. If you're elected mayor, what's next on your list?
Wow, what's next on my list? I think what we have to look to next is projects that will generate jobs, projects that will bring jobs into the town. We have some really great infrastructure now, the kinds of places that make this a community that is just a phenomenal place to live and work. And so now we have to get the employers here and working. And that could be working on some of the infrastructure in the industrial park. It could be working on some of the projects like that would create revenue generation for the town. As much as I have my concerns about this idea of the potential for a solar project, I fully support the idea of doing a solar farm, if that's something that is reasonable and something that we could do here, simply because it serves so many different needs. It creates revenue for us, it creates clean energy, it doesn't have the same kind of impact on a community that a wind farm would have. I certainly wouldn't want to have, we don't have enough space in town to even consider that. So yeah, I think that the next big projects should be about finding ways to invest in the community that generate jobs.
Bill, if re-elected as mayor, what's next on your list for big public projects?
Well, basically one that we've been trying to work on for a long, long time, and that's the use for the normal college and the library. And I think the two can operate together, and certainly that's something that we will look at. I do point out, through collaboration and discussion, that the County of Colchester has come forward with $2.2 million towards a new library, which they don't have to do. But we have that good working relationship. Certainly, that is a challenge to get the normal college refurbished. And as coming back from Austria, you see buildings over there 400 and 500 years old are totally functional today, and certainly add to the area in architectural value and look great. So the reason I say it's on the agenda is because we've been discussing it for the last year or so, and we'll have hopefully request for tenders in the next little while. The solar farm, again, a lot of what we do as municipal officials is we think out loud, take advantage of opportunities set before us. And certainly that comes under the sustainability plan that we put together in consultation with the Living Earth Council. We listened to what they said, and we took a number of their suggestions and basically put them into our sustainability plan. And now we have to act upon them. And part of a green community will create jobs and some other things.
Okay, and Kelty has indicated that she would like to make a rebuttal.
Yes.
Kelty?
I have taken a good look at that sustainability plan, and it really is an excellent document. It's something that is created through lots of community involvement and community participation, but it's not something that we just came up with the idea of doing on our own. It's something that was mandated. All municipalities in Nova Scotia were required to create a community sustainability plan. In fact, we were required to do it by March 2010, and ours is dated September 2010. So we were not at the front wave of that. It's something that we were required to do. It's been in place for 2 years. A plan is great. How do we implement it? What exactly are we doing? What kind of reports are out there that tell us, here's what the plan is, here's the action steps that were recommended, here's what we're doing to make sure that we're meeting that. I haven't been able to find that. Whether it exists or not, it's not available to the public, so people just can't know about it if it's not out there.
Bill, did you have anything that you wanted to counter with?
Well, the plans, like everything else, we put the plans together, and then there are other people who come up with another idea and get the community behind it, and they want to do that plan. And the farmers market is probably the best example of looking at what can work and the use of an old building and reducing the carbon footprint by using an existing building. We did that, and we had great results with it. And so plans are plans, and there's a lot of things that get in the way. One of the things I will say that, it did take a while because we listened to members of the Living Earth Council, and it took 2 years to implement what they do. I don't tell staff what to do, but they do it. We had consultation, and certainly, we're acting upon it now, and we'll continue to do so.
Okay, thank you.